And yeah, just going back to our Trello board, what we did yesterday, we did our available backend. So we got the SQL call working for our backend. So we set up a route that's a get to API properties. And this is going to return an array of data that looks like this, where it has price, beds, bath, first name, last name, email, agent ID. And today we're going to work on the available front end that we just looked at. And with that, we kind of have this flow where we want to set a page with React Router. We want to do our Axios call. We can normalize data, figure out UI with hard-coded data. And if I was doing this, if this was ordered, I'd maybe like do this like in this way. I kind of also try to figure out the UI first, and then try to figure out how to normalize the data. And then we're going to use we're going to actually hook up the real data to our UI. And then something that, we could maybe do later is the city backend. And I'll copy this card because it's going to be very similar. City front end. Throw that right there. So I think like as I'm doing this, I'm only one person. And, if I was working on a project by myself, I probably would not be using a Trello board. Maybe I would. I don't think I'd have it as organized as this. And this is really not even that organized. But I hope, and I think it will become apparent once next week, once you start working on your portfolio projects, that this really, really becomes almost necessary when you start working on a more complex projects with bigger teams. Because then everyone can kind of be on like literally the same page. And this is the page, is this Trello board. So everyone knows what everyone's kind of working on. You kind of can see the direction of the project, where it's headed, what's coming up next, what's been done. Just gives you a quick little reference. So what I kind of essentially did right there was a little bit of a stand-up, like a solo stand-up meeting, where I reviewed what I did yesterday. I reviewed what I'm working on, which is this available page. And then also talked about what I could potentially work on once I'm done with this. So I know this is like a lecture and I have this planned out, but my work planned out for today. But when you're at a company, this is kind of how like you get your day kind of planned out. Like, here's what I'm going to be working on today. And, with this one, if I was in like a stand-up call, I might be like, yeah, I think, this part's going to like, these parts are going to be easy. Maybe I'm a little worried about this part because I'm a little new to this, not quite sure. So, hey, senior developer, I might be asking you for help with this, in a couple hours once I get this stuff done. Cool, let me know when you need help. So that's kind of the thing you're going to talk about with other people. So it's really your opportunity. And I think this is just like human nature. People are more forgiving if you kind of like ask for help up front, or you tell them up front that like, oh, hey, there's this one part of this ticket that I'm kind of worried about. Don't just say like, oh yeah, this is going to be fine. I'm going to like get this done in an hour, when internally you're stressing out like, oh my God, I have no idea how to do this. Like, people in the coding industry are really nice. They understand that coding's hard. So I know, especially when you're beginning, you have a lot of like kind of that doubt, that imposter syndrome. So don't be afraid to, especially when you start your first job and like you're kind of working with people who really do seem to know what they're doing. Don't be afraid to be like, hey, I think I have no idea how to do this. So if I could get a little direction, that'd be awesome. Because what I think tends to happen is people don't speak up. They say, yeah, I can do this. And then 2 days later, it's like, well, why isn't this done? You said you could get this done in 4 hours. And you're like, well, I can't figure this out. So it's kind of not being shy, kind of getting ahead, talking with your team, communicating. Cool. So yeah, let's just jump right into it then. Any questions though on any of this where we left off? Nope. Sweet. I am going to delete this file. Okay. And I'm actually just going to close this just to kind of show you, this is like something I like to do when I'm working on a more long-term project and I'm just starting the day. I kind of just, so we did the stand-up and I kind of like to do this before, if I can, before like a stand-up meeting, is to, when I start my day, is just to open up my project. Let's see here. VS Code. So I'm going to just CD into this. Couple things I like to check. I would like to make sure, like if I do a git status, and I can also do this in VS Code. Like I want to make sure that like I'm just kind of, I mean, really, hopefully if I did it well, this should be clean. Like I'm just checking, wait, did I not commit anything yesterday? And it looks like I didn't. It looks like I have a change to my README. Which is fine. I could go look at my README. See, like, what is this change I don't know about? Because I really don't remember. Like, what did I last change? Oh, and it looks like I entered a unnecessary, like a not needed line. So I'm just going to undo that. Cool. Another thing I might do is like I said, if this was before stand-up, I might go look at like Trello just to see what I did yesterday, just to kind of refresh myself. I could also like, oh yeah, I did that one feature. I could start up my server. Just to kind of remind myself like what I did. Like, oh yeah, we did a localhost 3001 API properties API call. Oh, I need to get an extension git. Another thing I could do, or I would do, is especially we happened to finish a ticket yesterday and left on a good kind of ending note. Sometimes that's not always the case. So sometimes it can be good to like look through some of your commits. Just to kind of see what changes you have made. Get rid of this window. Oh yeah, like we added this property.available in our properties controller. We did this available method. We added this routes. So you can kind of just see what kind of things you did. This is, like I said, it's going to be likely when you're working on these bigger features that you don't get them done at the end of the day. Like, okay, I need to call it quits. I'm going to make a commit or something, and then I'm going to work on it tomorrow. But then tomorrow comes along. It's nice to kind of go through your code and see what you did. Take 5-10 minutes to kind of just refresh what you're working on. And like I said, you can look through your code, you can look through your commit history. You can look at your Trello cards. I think this is where Trello helps if you have these. If you have an organized Trello board or some sort of project management, that's going to help. And then you can also just start up. If you have like a React app running, start it up and just see where you left off. I'm sure you've already done that, right? Like some extent to this, you're already doing it. But yeah, utilize your tools. So has anyone gone through their commit history just to kind of remind themselves what they've done? Or have you not needed that yet? Yeah, I see a thumbs up. Yeah, I think it's really useful. So, and it's pretty quick, this, you can take like 5-10 minutes just going over it. And then it's also going to get you better at just like looking at this and a little better with Git. Cool. All right. So yeah, I think we're ready to get started. So I'm just going to do this just because we kind of really didn't start working on this branch. So yeah, if this was the beginning of the day, I would do a git pull origin master. It's already up to date. So my master's up to date. I'm going to do a git checkout to this. And then I would, git checkout to my front end branch. Let's say there was a change on master when I pulled from master. So I'm on my master branch in Git and I just pulled from GitHub. And then I just checked out to a branch I've already created because I created this AVFE branch yesterday. If there was a change on GitHub, do I need to pull, or since I pulled from master right here, is that going to work? Is that going to get the change? The answer is it's not going to get the change. So I would need to pull from master here if I wanted to get the change onto this branch. Let me just check out to master just to do another demo. Check out master. So let's say I'm on master, I do a git pull origin master. Let's say there is a new change and I got it. And I just got it, and then I did a git checkout and I create a new branch. Do I need to pull now from master? This one, yeah, I see someone shaking their head. This one I don't need to pull from master because this is a new branch. So I just created this brand new branch. So it's going to like clone exactly. So right now, these dummy and master are going to be the same because I just created it. Let's do one more, just kind of stretching your thinking with these branches and pulling from master. Okay. So let's say I'm on master now. so I'm on my master branch in Git. Let's say there's a change in GitHub. And I don't pull right now, and then I do a get checkout to a new branch. Is this new one branch going to have the changes from GitHub? Yeah, no, it is not going to have them. It's going to be the same as my master branch on my computer. So I would need to do a git pull. If I wanted the changes from GitHub, I would need to pull from GitHub. Okay. So yeah, so now I'm to my, this is another thing I would do when I'm starting the day, go check out to my branch. I've already did this, but just to kind of show, I'm going to pull from master. Why am I pulling from master in the morning? Like, why is that a good part of your routine?
Everyone tends to push at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's just, yeah, it's everyone pushes at the end of the day, or like maybe there was a merge request that, you know, went through at the nighttime. So it's just a way I can get updated from master. What does this also kind of say about master, that I can just pull from master at any time? Like I'm just, it's really not going to hurt me to pull from master.
Everything in there should be correct.
Yeah, that's kind of the big thing. The master branch should be working. You should not be pushing up broken code to master. Now, that's a very idealistic statement. You know, it's never going to be true. Like, but the intention should be you shouldn't push up broken code. But we all know that bugs exist. We all see them in production. So do that to the best of your ability. But that's kind of why we're starting to use branches now and kind of do pull requests to master. So it's a layer of protection. It's like, it's not just going to be on you now if your code screws up. It's kind of also going to be on the person who's reviewing your code. And a lot of the time, like, you'll have like a QA team that even before is, you'll have another, like, so we're not going to use it, but you'll have like that test, like a test branch or something, where before you push to master, you push to test. And then like a QA team goes and tries to knock on it and break it. And then they kind of sign off on it. And then it goes to master. And then there's also going to be another thing that we're going to talk about, which is production, which is going to be separate than our master branch. So that's going to be your actual website. And that one's like the holy grail, because that's definitely where you do not want bugs, is on your actual live production site. So we'll get to that next week, I believe. Cool. All right. So let's go ahead. So I know, like, I'm like yesterday and today we've done a little, like, not that much coding, and I'm trying just to kind of convey the importance of kind of like your workflow and tools, because it really, once you start working with, you know, bigger projects and bigger teams, they do become necessary. So I think when you're working on smaller projects, this might seem like a little bit of a headache, maybe a little boring, but it was something like when I went through DPL, like they didn't talk about. And so when I got to like my first job, I was just like a little lost. I mean, there's a lot of things you're going to experience like that. It's just impossible for us to kind of talk about everything, but it is something that I think, and I think it's also just becoming more and more prominent, you know, especially over like the last 5 years. So I think it's a good thing to kind of know about. Cool. So now we can start working. We do have a good plan of attack right now with this feature. We know what we're working on. We even have like a little demo. So we want to get all these properties by agent. So let's just kind of go through this flow. So let's just set up this page with the React router. That's kind of our first step. So I can go into my app, into my client, source, pages. Let's create a new page, call this available. Dude, is available AI or IA? Anyone?
AI.
AI, okay. That's what I thought. Just it's driving me crazy. Okay, so let's import React from React. Available. I don't know if I need to I still haven't set up VS Code to the way I like it. Let's do return. So here's my basic page. I just want to go and set this up. So I can go into my layout. And something else I'm going to do with this project, since we don't really need it, I'm just going to go ahead and which ones? I'm going to go ahead and get rid of these two public and protected links. And I'm going to do just copy this. You don't have to get rid of these. Let's make a link to available. All right, then in my app.js, I don't need these. I might get rid of, I'm probably gonna get rid of these routes in 1 second. Let's just get this working though. So let's do a path to /available. And the element. All right, Rails S, I need to start up my server and my React server. Go to localhost 3000. That doesn't seem to be working. I wonder if I have. Let's see here, pages available. I'm doing this right. All right. Oh, I spelled it wrong. Okay. So I think in my link, so many times I spell available wrong today. I just spelled that wrong, so it didn't match. So if I now go to my available page, there we go. And really, one thing I'm going to do, just because this is driving me crazy, is I thought I did this earlier, but I guess not. I want to just add a little bit of spacing between these links. I'm just going to do that with CSS. So I'm going to do a div a margin right pixels. There we go. Cool. So I know these are like kind of small steps, and you could maybe think like when I was doing the Trello card, like down the road, these would maybe be a little bigger steps, but maybe something you can do when you're doing these Trello cards is with these smaller steps, once you get one of these working, one of these kind of sub features working, like we have this available page set up. Maybe a good thing to do then be a commit. So I got like a small section working. I could commit that. So commits can kind of be, kind of these stepping stones of when you got like a maybe a sub feature complete. So yeah, if we go back to my Trello page, then the next thing we would want to do is like get the data. All right, so let's do that. So for this, I want my use state, use effect. So our good old-fashioned use effect function here. Let's call this get. All right. Create a function. This is going to be my async function. Try catch block. Let response equal axios dot get API / properties. Console.log response. We can just do a little simple error handling alert. Okay. So cool. Let's test this out. go into my React app. I have a promise pending on line 12 and 13. What does that mean if I have a promise pending? What, if you see that, what should that kind of maybe give you the hint of like what I'm doing wrong right here?
You need your await.
Yeah, I need my await because the axios.get function returns a promise, which I want to await for that promise to either fulfill or reject. So if it fulfills, I'm going to get the response back and it will log it. If it rejects, it's going to go to the catch. But I want to await for that to happen. Go ahead and refresh. Did I not save that? Nope. Didn't save it. There we go. There is my response.data. There is all of my agents. So it kind of gets a little harder to, what do I name this data? Is it agents? Is it properties? Is it it's kind of a combination of agents, properties, and addresses. So it's naming these variables, like that's kind of why I call this like get agent properties. I could call it agents maybe, or properties. I think I'm going to go with agent properties though. So for my use state, what I'm going to do one more thing here. I'm just going to set this up const. I'm just going to call it agent properties and set agent properties. Yeah, I think that works. I want to name, I'm trying to think of what I want to name this. Let's just name, we can maybe change the name later. I might. So here I can just set agent properties to res.data. And I'll leave that log here for now. So I could refresh, also check my components. Let's see how this, let's see if I can find this state inside of here. There's the link, there's the outlet. Available, there it is. Okay, so there's my state. So it's hooked up in my state, so I can see I have this state object. So cool. So now I'd say, hey, this one's, kind of done. This get data. Like I said, this might be a little overkill with the commits, but I think it kind of just illustrates this might be a way to use commits. You get a small feature done. Like maybe if this was at a company, maybe this particular feature took a couple hours, but now it's working. And I can say like, and I can commit. I would say like in real world, this is like too many commits, but just kind of showing we can go through these steps and then commit as we get them working. Cool. So now that we have that done, now we kind of want to get this data, but now we want to like figure out a UI for this data. So I'll give you the option. So in the Neo notes, we use semantic. So we could kind of maybe use semantic, or do you want to try using a different component library?
Let's try a different one, I think.
Okay. Let's try, okay, that works for me. Let's do, I mean, I haven't used Ant Design for a while, so it might take me a second, but yeah, let's, or we could use Ant Design, Bootstrap, or Material. I think, or let's just do a little research, React component libraries. Maybe we can pick one that I haven't ever used. 16 best component libraries. Material UI, Ant Design, Bootstrap, React Router, what? Oh, it's just component libraries, I see. Semantic UI React, Blueprint, Redux, Enrollment. A lot of these, let me do a little, let me specific UI component libraries. I've never heard of this one. Let's just, I'm just going to pick, actually, I'll have one of you, let me just go back to this site. Anyone? So I'll give you these choices: Material UI, Ant Design, or Bootstrap. Any preference for anyone?
We do Ant Design.
Cool. Let's do Ant Design. So Ant Design, it's actually, it's funny, it's designed like that. It's in, a lot of it's in Chinese because there's some, it's made in China, but it's, they have good documentation. So let's just kind of go through how we would get this set up. Now, something that I would have wanted to do before in Trello, like this should probably be its own ticket, like setting up Ant Design. But, you know, it's fine. We can, you know, set up Ant Design here as well in this ticket. This is an extra thing we need to add to this ticket. But generally, part of the process with Trello is you're trying to like keep tasks unified. So setting up Ant Design, that should maybe be its own separate thing, but that's fine. We can set it up right now since we haven't really done anything with our UI. All right, so let's go ahead and do this. Just kind of looking through their documentation. So we're going to do a yarn add Ant Design. Oh, crap. What did I do wrong there?
You did your client.
Yeah, let's see if that did anything. Okay, I stopped it before. So let me just have that finish. So let's say I did do this in my React, or sorry, in my Rails app. I shouldn't, this is just probably a huge library. Yeah, it's like already 10K. That's how many files that added. So yeah, I don't want that. So now my Git history is going to be keeping track of this node modules folder. I don't want that. I have a node modules in my client, which Git is not tracking. So I can delete that folder. If you ever see that 10K or like a huge crazy number, it's probably because you added a yarn package in your Rails app. I'm also going to delete my package.json and my yarn lock. Those are like the three things you need to do if you, I'm also going to probably like breaks VS Code skits. I'm going to reopen up VS Code. Please don't be there. Cool. So now that's gone. So yeah, where I wanted to do this was in my client. Yarn, add, and design. Do that in my client directory.
You
Now
repeat
that-
the 3 files that you have to delete, package.json, and then what are the other 2?
Package JSON and your yarn.lock, those are the 2 files. And then there's a folder, your node modules folder. But don't delete the ones in like, so in my client directory, I have a node modules folder. I definitely want that. But notice how it's grayed out. That means it's not getting tracked by Git. I also have a package JSON and a yarn lock in my client. Those ones I do want. And these have been changed because I have added, where is it? Ant design library. That's why those, if I look at the modifications in these, I've added ant design, and that's good. I want that. Cool. All right. Add. So what we need to do is we import in browser, add script and link tags in your browser and use the global. Oh, wait, I don't want to do that. Oh, so we used yarn. We don't need to do this one. Is that all we need to do? Oh, I think we need to. Well, let's try this out. Let's just try one of their components and see if it's working. I think we do need to import this. Let's go to our index.js. Just import the ant design CSS. I should be able to just go to my React app and that should change the styling. See, like that now I have their CSS. So even though I'm not using any of their components, you can tell that the styling has changed. So that is pretty straightforward to use that. And then, yeah, it probably would be wise to just go test out one component just to make sure it's working. I guess I can just do their example of a date picker. So I could go to like my available, import date picker. Date picker. Okay. There you go. There's a nice little date picker. So there we have ant design set up. And I could look at the changes, like I probably don't need the date picker there now. I know it's working. My index, yarn lock, package JSON. See the client. Oh wait. Just being kind of overly committing. Git commit -m design setup. So let's say now, like, this might be like, I think this is a good time for a break. So I've done a lot of commits, and maybe at this point, like I'm taking off for the day, or like, maybe someone wants my code. This might be a good time to do a push to origin master. Actually, that was not what I wanted to do. This would be a good time to do a git push origin avfe. Sorry. So now I can push up to my branch. It's not done, but maybe I'm done for the day. Maybe some other people want my code, but the features. So yeah, when I tried to push to master, that was not good. Luckily, it didn't let me do it. So now I pushed up to this avfe branch. And then if I go to GitHub, damn, I just had it. Let's see here. Now I have this available FE branch on here that has those recent changes. So it has the ant design set up. But notice how like, since my like commit message are getting a little better, like, if I look at these little messages, it's kind of showing what features have been done. Like, so this client one, that's a bad message, but like the last thing that's been changed in my index.js is the ant design's been set up. Index CSS, available page setup, available page setup. So your commit messages, if you kind of commit by like these small features, they kind of do help describe what's been changed. So let's go ahead though and take a break. Are there any questions on this? How are you feeling about the project management type stuff?
Pretty good.
Yeah, do you like it?
Yeah, it seems like more understandable.
Yeah, I think when it might, I like, it's kind of like actually like a love-hate love, because it can kind of slow things down, especially with something like this that we probably don't need it for something like this real estate app, but I think it really is going to come in, like once we get to something bigger like your portfolio projects, I think you're going to start to see that it's really nice, and it actually will speed up the process. And also, like, especially with stuff like Git and branches, it really does make working with a team it's more smooth. So cool. Let's see, what time is it? It is, let's take a little bit of a longer break. Let's come back at 11. Let's call it 11:25. All right. Cool. So we have installed Ant Design. Now, if I'm looking at my Trello card, the next thing I kind of want to do, and this is just how like I like to kind of do this. So we're getting back our data and we need to figure out how to do the UI. And then we're probably gonna have to like normalize the data so it matches how our UI is gonna want it. And so there's actually like a lot going on there. So what I like to do is kind of just go try to figure out how I want the UI to look as far as the code is concerned. And I'm not going to worry about real world, like the data I'm getting back from my Axios call. So if I look at like kind of the wireframes, and we can definitely don't have to follow this exactly. I just want to have maybe like a list of like an agent and then that agent's properties. So it's kind of like a list nested within a list. So let's just go into Ant Design. Since we haven't used this library before, let's go ahead and look at some of their components. So one I think could definitely use would be I could find like a table. So Ant Design, I can do a Command K, just search for table. Cool. And then that will like send me to a table example. They also have, and like Semantic does, I can open this up in like a sandbox, a code sandbox. And kind of see how their table works. And this would be like, because if we were doing with this with Semantic, this would probably be a lot different, like how Semantic's going to want the data versus like how Ant Design table is going to want the data. So it looks like with their table component, I pass it some like a columns prop. So that just looks like an array with title, data index, key, and render, which looks like is a function to render some text, or maybe I don't even need that one. I could just get rid of it. Looks like I just need a title and a data index. And really like it has like this tags. So maybe this one's almost like a little too complicated, this little example, because I don't really need all of this extra functionality, but I can just get rid of that. I just want like a basic table. And I'm kind of getting there just by, deleting some stuff. So I don't even need that one. So what do I want? I could look at my demo. I want like a price, beds, baths. Let's just try to like throw a price in there. All right, so I come in here. So all right, I want a title. This is going to be my price. Data index. Let's just kind of follow what they're doing, do a lowercase price and a key of price. We got a comma right there. And, you know, I don't want age, I want like beds. Refresh this, that break it. So there's the beds, but now all of a sudden it seems like, well, that data there is no longer showing. Now, if I look at the data, like the address is showing, but now the beds isn't. Let's just switch like this to beds here. So I'm just trying to kind of figure out how like Ant Design is it kind of expecting this data. So this data index, I wonder if the data index needs to be like what it, the key name. And that's what it looks like. So in my data, it's going to index it by the name. So that's like the name I'm saying that's going to be the key. So if those names match, that looks like that's how that's going to work. Don't really need this tags or address anymore. And something else I could do is like, you know, they're going to have documentation on how to do this. Like they have a, like, this is just the documentation for a table. So one of the reasons I kind of, or like semantic, is that semantic's a lot, I think, simpler to use. But if you look at like semantics table, it's pretty unfunctional. Like Ant Design, it looks like you can like move around columns. Like their Ant Designs table has a lot more functionality. But that's probably going to mean it's maybe a little more challenging to use. So that's kind of the trade-off. And we're just using a basic table and that's fine. But I'm just kind of trying to figure out how to do this. And this is why like Code Sandbox is nice and not worrying about actual real world data, because this gives me a place to kind of just mess around and try to get this working. So, you know, I can kind of take this data that I'm going to get back from my API call, go to my sandbox, kind of be like, hey, this is what I'm expecting. Right, so I can kind of just come in here and, you know, just kind of fake some data. Price can be, you know, whatever. Don't really need the address. Let's switch this to, you know, city. All right. So now I can throw a city in here. Just do SLC. You know, if I look at my wireframe, I don't really even need the agent in my table, but I think like I'm getting close enough to knowing how I want the data. Like I'm in here, I'm going to want like square footage. Do that. So something I am going to have to, I am probably going to have to hard code this column, all of this data. So let's just do it. I can just test this out. We have beds, we have baths, so I'll add baths to my column. "32 beds, that's quite a lot of bedrooms. What else do we have? Price, bed, bath, square footage, street, and zip. Let's do zip as well. Cool. So there is my, now I'm starting to figure out how I want my data to look. Unique key. Don't need a name on here. Does this kind of make sense why I'm doing it this way? Like I'm just trying to get the UI kind of looking how I want it to look in my app. But I'm not actually going to try to do this in my app right now. This is just a lot easier to do this right here. And now I've kind of figured out how to make an ant design table work with how I'm kind of expecting like my data, because I have these columns in my table and so forth. But now, so that's one part of this. So the next thing I want, because this gets more complicated, is I want to like have a table for each agent. So now maybe I need like, I don't know, I need a way to show an agent. So I can maybe do a card or something. Let's maybe just do like a basic, see how we do a basic card component. Card, it looks like it has a title, card content. We could do something basic, or we could maybe try, like if we wanted to add an image. Oh no, I'd say for now, let's just do like this basic card. So I'm going to take this card and I'm going to throw this in kind of this little demo I have going on here. Except now I kind of need to fix this. Because this is like in an index.js. So let's do this in an app.js. So I can actually write this a little easier. So my index.js, I'm just going to take all this code and I'll slack out this sandbox. Okay. So now this is my app.js. I don't need this ant design stuff and the React DOM stuff. I mean, the ant design like CSS stuff. I can get rid of the CSS stuff and the React stuff, but I still want to keep the ant design components, keep my data. And instead of rendering this to the DOM, I'm going to do just a return. Or I can do my function. I can do my functional component right here. Const app equals this. Return the table. I'm actually going to wrap this in a div. Export default app. And my index.js, I can get rid of all of this data stuff, components, and then do my React DOM. Instead of rendering that table component, I can render that app component. Make sure I just import that. So this code sandbox just put all of this stuff in the index.js. So I could do more. I just moved all that React stuff to this app component, and now I'm having React DOM render the app. So this is more like we get it set up in React with our React create React app. Now I have this app function, and now I can do my. Now I can come in and copy this card. So what are we getting back? We get the first name and last name. So like what I'm kind of thinking is, you know, this could be the name of the agent. And this could be the email. Not super, that kind of looks a little. Default card size. Or maybe just give this also. Let's try doing a small. Let's do a style width equals 300. What else can we do with this? Does that not have a border? No border. I don't know, maybe with this style equals. I'm just trying to make this, let's give this a background array. That doesn't look too good.
What if you change the border to true? Would that do anything?
Oh, that is, oh, that was false. I didn't see that there. Thank you. That's, how did I not even notice that? Let's try that. And then get rid of that. Yeah, and then like, let's maybe do for our card, like a margin bottom 20 pixels. And then maybe for this whole thing, let's see if there's like a container component in Ant Design. So container. List. Because now I kind of want to maybe do like, I mean, I could maybe try doing this with the list. Let's show code. Oh, that's a render item. Let's do a divider. Sweet. I just want something to maybe separate these from one another. Because what's going to be going on is I'm going to have multiple of these. Divider, let's import divider. I don't need that to say default size. All right. This is I'd say this is like not the best UI, but like I think this is good enough for what we're trying to do. Like the point here is, I'm going to have, an agent information and then like the agent's properties. Let's see if I do like a H1. Just does that make it look a little better? Make an H4. Cool. Yeah, I think this is fine. We can maybe clean this up later, but the point here is what I have here is I have kind of a general outline of how I want this to look. And then I'm just using this dummy data. But one thing I could also go on from here is, well, just thinking about how I might, because right now this is hard coded. I can still have it be hard coded, but let's go one step further with this and try to be able, instead of just writing out the JSX here, let's create a data structure. So const, I'm just going to call this agent data. Let's call this agent properties. So what I'm trying to do is like, I'm kind of trying to decide how I want my data back so I can map over it and create, this array or like this JSX. So what I'm going to want to have like a name. We'll put John Doe here. An email. That's just going to be, whatever, test@test.com. And then we could have maybe like this properties column. And the properties is actually going to be, this data array. So I'll just call this pdata1. What doesn't it like? Oh, I'm forgetting a comma right there. And then I would have another agent. I would need to make another like property data array. Let's see, data is not defined. That's fine. We're going to fix this in 1 second. So now I could do like a function const render like agent properties. So I'm going to do this return agent properties dot map. Go through each of my agents. What I'm going to want to return. So remember how like one of these is my agent. So instead of the hard coding the title, that's going to be agent.name. This one's going to be agent.email. And this is going to be agent.properties. And then if I want to throw that divider here, I can throw this divider right there. Now, I'm getting into an issue here because this is how I want this like one agent to look, but my return doesn't like this because it just must have one parent element. But I don't want to add an extra div. So this is where like the fragment can come in handy. So now I can set, because that's how I want like an agent to look. And then I can use that fragment so I don't get that error. And now I can delete this hard-coded stuff and use that function. Render agent properties. And let's just switch up some of these so it's a little different. Like, but see what I'm doing now. Now I'm able to loop over this data. I'll render the agent information and then I'll render that agent's property. I'll render that agent information and render that agent's properties. So I've just figured out how to do the UI with kind of like the data I'm expecting to get back. But then I'm also I have to figure out how, like, since I'm using Ant Design, I have to like use the table and use their components how they want to be used. Like their table wants this columns array and it wants this data source array. I do have this, let me just pull it up. I have a similar example with semantic. I just wonder how similar in how different it is. Because I tried to follow like the same, like look where I have a card and then the table. And it kind of does look like the agent information's, similar, where we have a name, email, and then a properties array. Agent, full name, email, properties array. But how we render that, how like semantic does it, is a lot different. Like, because here, instead of like with Ant Design, I just say, hey, here's the columns and here's the properties. With Ant Design, I kind of like go out and actually build out the table header. Then I go do the table row and have to like map over the properties. So, and it just so happens that like, and this is kind of a coincidence, that I kind of want to get my data in the same format. And what I mean by that is the format is, I have agent properties with name, email, and then this properties data. But does this kind of like, does it make sense why I'm doing this in Code Sandbox and kind of doing this piece by piece with like this fake data? I'm not really concerned about how I'm getting my data back. I'm just concerned about how do I get the UI I want in Ant Design? And then I started to think about, how could I create a data structure that would be easy to map over? And this is what I came up with, was this agent properties array that has these objects. But now I know, like, I can now take, so the next step I would do is just, since I have this working in Ant Design, I would now go get this working in my code. So in my available page. So what I would do is take this dummy data, go ahead and plop it in here. Even though I'm going to like delete this eventually, take this render agents property function, throw that inside of here. I hate this forward tab. Okay, and then what else do I need to do? This is just my return right here. So just this div. And then I need to make sure I imported my components. So I can go back here to my localhost 3000. Cool. Now I have that in my actual available page. So if I look at like the Trello, like the step, that's really like this step, figure out UI with hard-coded data. And this one, I think this one's not, especially if it's like this net, like we were doing a nested list in like a list. That's why this one is a little more challenging. It's like this nested UI. So this, and then we're using like a new library. So this one can be a little challenging, because you're probably not going to find like, here's like the exact, like if you're, whether you're using semantic or ant design or whatever, you're not going to find something that matches your use case exactly. You're going to have to go like to like your component library and kind of, you know, kind of do the Lego stuff where you're kind of picking components and kind of making them work for you. It's probably going to be pretty rare that you find like an example that is just exactly what you need. I think we could have maybe done this with a list. That would have probably been better. I could have done that with a list component, but I think this is good for now. Sweet. Okay, so if I go back to our Trello card, so now we have this step. So we're getting back our data from our Axios call, and then we have our UI. So now I kind of want to start combining the two. So let's do that. So let's look at like when we log our properties, or I can look right here. Oh, I don't think my server's running. Oh no, it is my React. Wait, how's my React running? Wait, my Rails server's not running. Rails s-p 3000. Okay. Let's refresh. Okay, so when I get back, when I do my Axios call, here's the array of, if I can just copy one of these. Hope that doesn't copy the whole thing. When I do this Axios call, I'm getting my data back. And I want to do this right by agent properties. I'm getting my data back like this. Oh, crap, that didn't copy it. Copy value to clipboard, come on. Nope. All right. Let's do it from my console. So I get the data back like this as an array of objects that, you know, has these keys. And now I want to convert it to an array of objects that looks like this agent properties data. So one thing to note with this data, notice how I have like, so this is agent Eric. That's the email Eric Dack. Notice this email's in there multiple times in like the same name. I only want to show that agent once. So it's not like I can just take this data and map over it. So what I need to do is I need to take this data that I'm getting back and convert it into how I want this data. Does that make sense? Is everyone let me do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to console.log res.data. There's a way. I think it's copy. I'm going to throw this out in Slack so I can see this. Okay, so let's do this in a separate file. I'm just going to like go to VS Code. Just maybe in like my root level, create like a demo.js or whatever. I'm gonna say this const data equals, and I'm gonna paste what I just threw in Slack in there. So, and I'll kind of start you, but I want you to try to do this on your own for a second. What I want you to do is, so here's our data. I want you to try to, convert data to agent properties. So remember, agent properties is an array of data that has an object that has name. So for instance, we have Kirk Chaplin. And there's the email. And then the properties, which would be an array of objects. Now, I think Kirk has 5 properties. So it'd be like the properties would be this array. And we really don't need the first name, last name. We don't need like the address in there or the agent ID. We just need what we need for like the ant design table. And then you'd also have, there's also, see, Mercedes is in there once. So she would have 1 property. So you'd have a, Mercedes would be in here once. Does this make sense? So that's kind of what I want you to try on your own, is to write this function or to do this logic. I forgot her email. So you want to go from the array of data we're getting back from our Axios call to how we set up our data in our available page to work with ant design. Now, I'm going to give you like 10 minutes, or I'll give you like 15 minutes and then plus like another 10 minutes for a break. So if you want to spend some more time working on that. But try, I would say don't even try getting this done. Maybe try somehow one thing you could try to do is maybe just, how'd you get back just this array? And don't even worry about doing the properties. Maybe just, how do you get back the array of all the agents and their emails? So the agents with their full name and an email. And then you could leave like, you could have a properties thing in here, but just leave that as an empty array for now. And then maybe once you get this far, you could say, well, how do I now that I have all my unique agents, how could I go through and like maybe grab their properties? And you can have extra stuff if you feel like you want like to keep track of an agent ID here, or you want to have a separate array of like agent IDs that just have all the unique array, like IDs of the agent. You can do stuff like that. So cool. Yeah, so let's take, I'll give you a second for like let me, since we're kind of running short on time, let's give you like a 10-minute break, and then I'll give you like 10 minutes to work on that. And I think 10 minutes is not enough, but I just want you to try to kind of think of it on your own for a second before I do it, and just to get some practice. So let's come back at 12:35. Any questions? All right. Let's go ahead, get started. How is that? Is that hard? People usually struggle with this one. So let me kind of give you some suggestions when you run into kind of like a little challenging brain teaser like this. First of all, there's not like a best way to do this. There's definitely going to be a lot of ways you could do this, a lot of different things like strategies. So coding is can be like pretty creative. So my method kind of is just to get, as I've been saying all week, it's just breaking down, seeing if I can break this down into like something simpler. So one way that I think would maybe be nice, or something that'd be nice to do, is I somehow just want to get like, because I have this issue of having like multiple agents in here. And maybe I just want to weigh, how do I just grab like a list of unique agents? And maybe I could just go through and create an array of just the unique agent IDs, because I have that. So that might be, because, you know, here I have an array, you know, where I have agent ID in here like, you know, 5 times. And then I have this agent ID 2 in here once. So maybe I just want to go through and create, you know, figure out how I can get, you know, the unique values. And then if I can do something like that, that can be something, if maybe I might not know how to do off the top of my head, but that's something that's a little easier to Google. So because that's another reason it's nice to break stuff down. If you can break stuff down, then you can Google it, like get unique values from array JavaScript. And then that can kind of be like, that's like the smaller problem I'm trying to figure out. And then I can use Google for that. I can kind of look at some examples. So here's an example where like they have an array, just 1, 1, 2. And then it looks like they spread out over it and they do a new set with that array. So let's kind of look at that. So I could come into like just, you know, the console in a browser. I have some array that has like just duplicate values. So let's do like, I don't know, set X or X set, because maybe the set is something a little new to us. New set, past that X. So a set is a type of, you know, it's a thing, it's actually a new feature in JavaScript with ES6, I believe. But a set just looks like I can pass it an array and it gives me back a set. This looks like an object. This is not an object, there's no key value pairs, but it's with curly brackets. This is just, you know, those unique values. So that's what a set is. There's other programming languages that have sets, and sets are just generally unique values. But what this example is showing me is like, hey, I can create a new set, pass it in an array. That will give me a new set of the unique values. And then I can spread out over the set into a array. So here I'm spreading out over a set. That converts it back to, you know, an array. So, and then they're just doing this in one line where they spread out over the new set. Sweet. So that's, now I've kind of figured out a way to, given an array of numbers that might have duplicates, I figured out how to create an array of unique values. Well, I don't have an array of numbers. I have an array of, all of this data. So how do I go through this array and just create an array of IDs, of the agent IDs, just a number? Any ideas with that one?
I use map.
Map? Yeah, I could just map over that array. So I could say like IDs equal data.map. This give me so many. So I could go through like each thing and return the thing.agent ID. And just do this step by don't be afraid to take your time on this and make sure that's working. Run this node demo.js. Sweet. So now I'm pulling off all the agent IDs into this array. So I could then say like let unique IDs equal, I could do that thing where I just learned how to do new set IDs. Cool. Console.log unique IDs. So now I have this array of unique IDs. All right. So now let's try doing something like this. I could take that unique IDs array and I could map over this array. So now I'm mapping over all of my these unique IDs. And then, like I was kind of saying before when I kind of said like, oh, how could you maybe just grab like the emails and name? So what I could do here is I could just maybe do a data. So I could take my data and then I could filter my data. So let's just start out with this. So I'm going to go through all my data and I'm going to filter, hey, does the data.agent underscore ID, as long as it equals the ID. Let's keep that. And let's just store that as like X. And really, I mean, what I could really call this is properties. And then let's just do a console.log. Let's do it before we do that. Let's get an ID. Properties. Properties. So notice here, like I'm logging the ID. There's one. And now since I'm filtering over the properties where they match, I'm just going to log the properties where the agent ID is 1. 111. And then once I get to different, when I loop over the next one, the ID of 2, then I'm only going to match that properties where the ID is 2. But notice the properties array has like the first name and last name and email. So something I could do here is like I only want this information once, but since I know these are unique IDs and it's going to match that agent ID, and properties is going to be just one of these objects just from my normal data. What I could also do is just log, really the name. I could just take the first thing from my properties and grab, the first name. Let's do some good old fashioned concatenation. Properties at 0. Because I know this first item in the array, that's going to have the agent information. Mercedes Rainier, if I scroll up, there's Kirk Chaplin. Also grab the email. There's the name and email. So I could just have this return. Start returning this object. So the name could be this. And the email could be this. I'm just going to call this X for now. Let's get rid of these logs for now. Now did I get rid of some? Oh, wait. Why does that break this? What did I just do? Oh, I see what I did. Oops. Right. Syntax error. So now I've kind of done that step of, because I loop over my unique IDs, and then I go back through my data and I filter, and I just, through each unique ID, I just pull all the properties off that match that ID. And then to grab the name and the email, I just assume, hey, the first thing in that properties array is going to have the name and last name and email. So there's my array of agents. And now I could also do something like this. Properties. And now I'm kind of logging out over have the name, email, and then I also have the properties. Now, if I were to like inspect like the properties a little more closely, like let's just go look at the first thing. Fixed. x dot, oh, sorry, x dot 0. I grab the first thing. That has all this information, but also has all this extra information. Like the first name, last name, email address. It's not going to really break anything, but I could do this. Let's call this something. I'm going to call this filtered properties. So what I could do is I could just go through those filter, like these properties, and I could map over these. And just return the keys I want. So I want I want the price. And the property.price. I want the beds. Beds. I want baths. Baths. I want the city. City. I want the zip. P.zip. I want the street. P.street. What else do I need? I think that's really that's the data I want for that, and then I could just go ahead and throw that there. Now this properties array just has the price, beds, bath, city, zip, and street. Right, that's what I wanted. Oh, I also need a key. Oh, and I need the square footage. So let's grab that. Let's do the square footage. P.square underscore footage. Now for the key, I think the key is unique to Ant Design, and that probably just wants like a unique number. So for the key, I could just use the ID. Square foot. Do I not have square footage in here? Looks like I might not have square footage. That might be a back-end problem, but let's just continue on with this. So I have, but you see how what I'm doing here now, this is matching, this object is matching how I'm kind of expecting it with the Ant Design component, where it has key, city, beds, bath, price, square foot, street, and zip. Our square footage is undefined here, but I think that might be from the back end. So going back to this, I now have this little method to grab to kind of normalize the data. And I could have done this in the available, but I'm going to now take this into the available. And what I'm going to want to do first is I'm going to make this normalize data function here and pass it the response.data. Set this equal to a variable, let normalized data equal that. So let's write this function const normalize data. This takes in some data. And then I'm going to paste what I just did. Inside of here. I don't need these console.logs. Let's get rid of those. Let's clean this up a little. I think I got it right on. All right, so I grabbed my unique IDs. This is actually going to be my normalized data. So I'm going to go through my unique IDs, create those filter properties, and then return the actual data. But then at the end of this, I'm actually going to want to return that normalized data. I need to get my back. All right. So this is called normalize data. Spell this one. All right. And so then once I do that, then I can set the agent properties to normalize data. Now, a lot's going on here. So, even though I did that in a separate file, now I want to make sure with kind of just those small changes I made, did I break anything? So I could go to my React app, refresh, go look at my components, or I could log it, but I want to look at my state. Now, if I look at my state, see, I have this email and name, and then if I expand on it, then they have the properties, which then has the key, the square footage, the price, beds, bath, city, zip, and street. So now that looks the way that I want it for my UI.
Can you select out that normalized data function?
Yeah. Sweet. So now that that is set, what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this dummy data. Well, no, I don't want to delete the columns. I need the columns because that's part of my table. So I do need that. But what I can do is take this agent property state, and in my render function, I'm going to use that. If I spelled it right, I wouldn't need to change that. I would have just needed to delete that dummy data. And then it's working, voila. So now my available page is actually grabbing the data from the database. It's normalizing the data and then, sending that data to the ant design component to render it. So I think when you first look at when we first looked at this page, you probably didn't imagine it would be that complicated, right? This was a lot of work to generate this UI. But if we think about what's going on along with this page, there's a lot of information. There's a lot of stuff because we have 3 different tables in our backend that we're combining. And then we're kind of sending it back in a certain way, and then our front end is going to utilize it in a different way. One thing that I want to look at is the square footage. That looks broke, but first, before we do that, I would say like as far as the front end, this looks done. We have this square footage issue. I wonder if that's with the back end. So I'm gonna go check the property model. And yeah, that's the issue. We're not sending it back there. So let's do this just to kind of show you how we could resolve this. So when we're working with like Trello type stuff, and like when you're working with a team and maybe you're a front end person and you have someone else that's a back end person, like, and I'm working on this ticket, fixing that part, that back end part is not part of this front end ticket. So what I might do, I can maybe do like a git add dot, because I've kind of tested this. I think it looks good, and we've decided that the issue, the square footage not showing, is an issue with the back end. So I think I'm going to just do a git add, git commit. Say this is done, or like maybe almost done. Back end. Could also just push this up.
Did you mean to push that to the master?
I keep on doing that. Yeah, luckily it doesn't let me do that from this branch. So I can push up to my branch, and maybe let's say like someone else is the back end person. So I'm going to check out to master. I'm also going to close all these files. So now see, like demo.js is not in there because like I'm on the master branch now. So this no longer has the changes that I just did. So what I'm going to do with master, actually, I'm just let's do a git checkout, like backend fix. I need to create this branch because it doesn't exist. So in this backend fix branch, then I would go to like the property.rb. I would add the square foot in my SQL call. Before I push this up and create a pull request, I could test it out. See, now it has the square footage, so that looks good. Cool. So then I could do a git add dot git commit. And I could push up origin backend fix. Cool. So now that backend's fixed, it's ready to be merged. So I could go to GitHub. Go to that. So now I have two pull requests. Well, I haven't created pull requests, but I have these two branches. This one I can go ahead and whatever stuff here. Create my pull request. Files changed. Oh. Why is that one in here? See, This is not good because I'm not sure why the available, maybe I think what I did is I didn't save this. And that shouldn't be in here, but we're kind of short on time. So normally I would be like, okay, this shouldn't be in here because this isn't part of that pull request, but whatever, that's fine. But does that make sense? This available should not be in here because it's not, it should only be this one file that's changed. I'll just go ahead and approve it anyway. But normally that would be probably like a reason to be like, I'm not going to approve this pull request because you have changes that are unrelated to this. So now that's pulled. So that's now merged to master. So then I could do a git checkout back to that front end branch. Now I could do a git pull origin master. Hopefully I don't have a conflict on the available page. Okay, I don't. So yeah, that was the only thing that was changed in the properties model. So let's just pretend like a backend person made the fix to the back end to that property RB. So once they were done, they're like, hey, that's now merged to master. Now I can pull. Now I should be able to start my server. And cool. And now the square footage is there. Cool. So now on this branch, I can do a, well, let's just do a git status, make sure nothing's, yeah, that's not, that's all clean. So I can now do a git push. Just make sure I push that up, AVFE. Cool. So now I can go to GitHub, go back to this, compare pull request, create the pull request, and then have someone else merge it, and then it's merged. Git checkout, master, we'll get pull, origin master. Is this going to pull down anything? Yes, it is. It's going to pull down all those changes I just made from this branch. So now my GitHub's up to date, master's up to date, and then I've also pulled down on my computer, and now the master's up to date with GitHub. So, woo-wee. Quite a bit of work. Like since we're throwing in Trello, since we're throwing in a lot of GitHub stuff and branch stuff, it was quite a bit of work to do this one feature. Essentially, it's taken us 2 days. But it's just part of the flow. I know this is like, there's a lot of steps here. I think this is very much an overwhelming week, I would say. But we're really, there's not much new we're learning. It's just really, I mean, there is the SQL stuff and kind of like the normalizing data. That's just kind of some good old fashioned coding, but it's a lot of steps. But the more you can break those steps down, and you can break those steps down, and you can break those steps down, that's kind of how you make this manageable. How are you feeling about this? we're gonna do, so like tomorrow and Friday, we're just gonna kind of do like the same stuff though. So we'll get tomorrow and Friday, we'll do the next feature, cities, which is, it's going to be very similar, and we're going to try to follow this same flow. So we're at least going to get some repetition. Now the code's going to be different, and like the SQL and that kind of stuff, it's going to be different, but the process itself is going to be very similar. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, it's okay. We'll have a couple days to kind of practice this. And then with the Trello and GitHub stuff, you're going to get a lot of practice with this for the remaining of the course once you start with the portfolio projects. So by the time you're done, you should feel pretty comfortable with like branches, pulling and pushing, that kind of thing. But we are already over time, so let's go ahead. Let's meet back at, since it's like one, let's meet back at 2:15. Sound good?
Yeah, thank you.
Cool. Have a good lunch, everyone.